Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Arnell, the Executive Director of the Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center here in Asheville, North Carolina. Thank you for joining us today. During these complex and difficult times, our museum continues to reimagine our work, to listen to our community, and to find the best way forward to share the incredible stories of Black Mountain College. Like many arts organizations around the country, we are asking ourselves what is the best way to support and connect with our community, support artists and curators, continue important research with scholars, create a platform for critical dialogue, and continue to offer space for art experiences. This is a work in progress. Over the past few months, we've collaborated online with artists, curators, and scholars from around the United States, Europe, Australia, and right here in Asheville. Much of this work is currently available on our Instagram page and website, blackmountaincollege.org. You may or you may not know that our museum has only 4 staff members, and we often say that we are a small but mighty museum. We are mighty because of the amazing history and legacy of the college and because of our community and your support. These are extraordinary times for all of us, and your support is needed now more than ever. If you're in a position to give, we would greatly appreciate donations of any size. You can find a link to contribute in the text field below. As the only museum in the world completely dedicated to Black Mountain College, we are fortunate to have a guidebook of sorts that includes an amazing example of an inclusive community with an expansive worldview grounded in experimentation. Black Mountain College continues to provide our museum with an endless wellspring of inspiration for programs that connect to just about every part of contemporary arts, culture, and education. Today's program is no exception. I'm so excited and honored to welcome Brooklyn Ryder and Matana Roberts for this virtual program. Brooklyn Ryder will be joining us from New York, and Matana will be joining us from Berlin, Germany. Brooklyn Ryder will perform Matana's piece, Borderlands, from their new album, Healing Modes. Healing Modes is Brooklyn Ryder's latest record that explores the interconnection of music and healthfulness. The recording is currently available on In a Circle Records and includes Beethoven's A minor, Opus 132, along with 5 new commissions. Borderlands is one of those commissions. Many of you tuning in may remember that Brooklyn Ryder performed Healing Modes at our museum in 2018. Brooklyn Ryder's talent and energy and passion seems endless. Since 2006, they have collaborated on dozens of eclectic, genre-bending projects. They have worked with so many living composers and continue to expand the idea of what a string quartet could look like in the 21st century. The group includes violinist Johnny Genselsman, Colin Jacobson, violist Nick Cords, and cellist Michael Nicholas. Matana Roberts is an internationally renowned composer, sound experimentalist, and mixed media practitioner. Roberts' works in many contexts and mediums, including improvisation, dance, poetry, and theater. She has released a diverse body of solo and ensemble work under her own name on Constellation and Central Control Records over the past decade. We will actually hear 2 versions of Borderlands. The piece is about 8 minutes long, and we will hear the first version at the top of the program, followed by the conversation with Matana and Brooklyn Ryder, and then we will end with the second version of the piece. Thank you again for tuning in. Here is Brooklyn Ryder performing Borderlands by Matana Roberts.
Borderlands. Borderlands. Seeing the term border is quite a nationalist deserved thing. There's a deeply stunted however, looking at our history, hope changed. Hope can accomplish, see that.
Hi, everyone. That was wonderful.
It was amazing.
Thank you.
It's, I think it's something that probably everyone needs to get used to, that you don't have a thunderous applause after a performance. But in my mind, there's a thunderous applause. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. It's sort of surreal. It's so surreal to be in this situation, and also to actually watch ourselves perform this piece. Is, we always live in it when we're performing, never have seen it. So it's a whole other experience. Michael, you look particularly ominous with your all black and the mask. Like,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the best place to start, and because there's so much to cover with the music and the project, and maybe if we could start, with zooming out on the actual healing modes itself, and if we could hear maybe a little bit about the project and the idea, and then kind of move to Matana and her piece. And her compositional process, and then maybe the interpretation and performance practice, and we'll see where it goes. So healing modes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
I just will point out one as we're dealing with, all of us actually these days, with technology in a way. Oddly, I saw Johnny talking before, but I can't hear Johnny speak. So I just want to make sure you can all hear me, and I'm happy to talk about healing modes quickly. Of course, this was an idea that we had way before the moment that we find ourselves in today, and I think healing is such a perennial topic, in the world, and it's actually something that music is uniquely capable of addressing, I think, because actually music is such a placeholder for culture, and for the experience of people, and for histories, and it's actually the place. We've had a friend who often refers to music is actually what a culture says about itself, that is so precious that the words can't do it, in a way. And I think healing goes very deep in a way. So the Greeks talked about healing. This musics of all cultures, talk about the healing properties of music. More closer to the present, Beethoven, actually, this is a huge theme for Beethoven in his late string quartets, which for us represent a kind of desert island in the string quartet repertoire. It's just it is music that looks backwards in time and forwards in time, and you don't know exactly where you stand, but it is right in the middle of Opus 132 that Beethoven writes his Holy Song of Thanksgiving, from a convalescent to the deity. And that was after about a very serious illness that Beethoven had, and he was on the mend, and he was writing again. And we say that of course it's his physical body that he feels healed, but it's actually the return of his creative spirit. For Beethoven, that is actually the real source of healing and the real cause for Thanksgiving there. And I think that Beethoven valued above all things. And I think something that the quartet values as much as we do, the tradition, which is so incredible and so strong, but I think something that we value so deeply is actually relationship with composers and creators today. So everything that we like to do wants to be on an equal footing with what's happening today. So we thought we would commission 5 composers to write works for us, just with a very simple prompt. It wasn't about Beethoven. It wasn't about anything really specific other than a prompt about healing and music and what to contribute to the dialogue. And we got amazing works back that were each very different from each other, from 5 different voices, from 5 different cultural experiences, and of course Matana's piece is one of them, and you just heard it. So that's a little bit about what Healing Modes is about. I should say also the album was released at the end of March, and of course we didn't predict that, as I said before, but it was released in the middle of this time, which was just one of these weird coincidences out there, but we're all reminded about the essential nature of music right now, and what it does for people and how it works in different ways for different people.
Yeah, I thank you, Nick. Does any of the other members of the group want to weigh in on the project, or do you want to pass it along to Matana?
Would love to hear from Matana.
Matana, your piece is so rich, and it's so wonderful that we have 2 versions of it, and 3 versions, the record version too. And there's so much to it, and I don't read a little bit about it, but would love to hear what you were thinking and what was going on with it.
Oh, well, at the time that Brooklyn Writer contacted me about doing this commission and talked about the theme of healing modes, I was going through a lot of internal, pain around the news headlines that I was reading about migrant children on the US and Mexican border crisis. And at that time, I really needed an outlet to kind of deal with my own helplessness in the situation. And I really believe that music is an energy, and it's this vibration that we can put out into the world to be a part of the collective energy of creation and movement and shifting things. So in a sense, that piece is sort of my prayer for those children, but also it allowed me to dig in deeper into history behind the US and Mexican border and how things have become so fraught. I really like data and data sets in terms of dealing with historical data in a lot of my work. And so I also saw this as an opportunity to build off of those ideas.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. It seems like from getting to know your work over the years that there's a lot of research involved, and that's part of your process. And can you tell us a little bit more about specifically, this, because it's a lot of these topics and things that you take on are personal, but also so, they're so complex with so many different emotional connections and real life, kind of life and death, things that are a part of it. And the border situation is so complex, and it's not solved, and it's still like we're in it still. So
no, yeah, we're definitely in it. I don't know. I mean, I have such a fraught relationship to the United States of America because I love the country that I'm from, and I love the history despite all of its intricacies and problems, I love the history that made me possible. And so a lot of the way in which I approach that work is from this idea of love and what it means to me to be an American, and what I saw in those headlines and in those stories that were coming out, just the antithesis, the opposite of what I feel being American should be. And, you know, I find it really offensive that there are people in my country that don't even have a clear understanding of their own immigration into the United States of America, and how they were not indigenous. Most of the people shouting about, you know, immigration and these migrants and children. So the base comes from a love of history. I love thinking about all the mundane things as humans from day to day we have to do just to survive. And I love thinking about the ways in which that human perseverance links across ideas of borders or where you're from, because no matter where you're from, you are a representation of someone's perseverance to survive, to stay alive, to push through. There's not a single human being that does not have that in their history. So trying to figure out different ways of talking about those universals while calling to task, you know, America, using the Declaration of Independence in that piece is very purposeful, because those are the words that are the foundation of a country that has touts liberty and justice for all, but really it's liberty and justice for some.
Yeah, and you know, so we I took a look at the score, but and I would love to hear more, or if you could share more about.
I just tried to box it in. It's just such a strange medium. It's amazing to do it like this. So about the score. So I, as a composer, well, I feel like I slide between composer and sound conceptualist, and just try to weave in and out of those things. And I'm really interested in seeing how far past the limit of what is deemed composition I can go. And I feel very grateful that people continue to present me with opportunities that I can challenge, you know, the kind of oppressive nature of colonialist language and as music, important colonialist language, but still, for me as an African-American woman, it's challenging to try to talk about, well, what is music? What is sound? What is composition? What is language? And what's the standard of which we're trying to hold that to? So I purposely like working with graphic notation. I do like working with Western notation. I am conservatory trained, but not in composition, I'm self-taught as a composer. But I do have a love for that Western canon, and just trying to figure out different ways of communicating ideas from that canon through a more visual aesthetic is something I find really interesting, because it also, as you heard Brooklyn Ryder, it gives them freedom to really expand, collapse and expand and collapse and expand and collapse and expand. And that's this kind of edge of dissonance that I really enjoy. I also want the scores to sit as tactile art objects. So that's kind of another goal, where the score on its own can transmute its own music through the relationship of the viewer to the object, outside of the relationship between the musician and the object. I really like playing with those sides.
That's amazing to hear, because there seems to be an endless debate about that exact thing of whether a score can be kind of a visual object, straddling these worlds. So that's fascinating, and I think that it's refreshing to hear that it could exist in both ways, as a score and directions, and with interpretation, but then also, as you said, as there could be music just from the visual object itself.
Well, also because the basis to me of being an American is about freedom. It's about this kind of idea. I'm able to, I'm talking to you from Berlin, Germany today, partly because of the freedoms that have been afforded to me in order to do that. And those freedoms were hard fought for. And I feel the music should represent that too. Yeah.
And coming back to Brooklyn Rider, which is something that always, again, over the years, and I'm thinking about, and Michael, I know you made a mention on the side that we had a picture of Eric in there. Apologies for that. But as a group and an organism over time, how you get to know each other and how you take on projects like this, Healing Modes, and so many other projects and collaborations over time with very old music and very new music. When you look at something like a Matana score and this graphics notation, and you're able to dig in, I would love to hear about, that process and that rehearsal process, or that kind of group kind of thinking on that. Because I think it's really interesting and really bold, actually, in so many ways, and I appreciate it so much.
Maybe I'll jump in to start off, but I mean, bold and generous is what Matana has given us, and trust that we will take this thing that she's created and hopefully realize the incredible amount of vision and energy and thought that went into this piece. And I guess, as a quartet, that was the first graphic score we played together. Maybe individually, I've done personally very little, just a little bit of, some Earl Brown cage action at some point, but not very much. And one of the things often we say when we're introducing your piece, Matana, at concert, is that, obviously Borderlands and borders are such a metaphor that everyone can relate to. And certainly in a quartet, even just the act of being a string quartet, or a musician in general, you have to cross that border from your head to your instrument, and make whatever's in your head come out. If a composer's written something for you, there's the act of translating that, which is crossing many borders, and then you have to do that with three other individuals who are all strong-minded people who have their own ideas. So you're in the act of playing this piece. We've had the border of working with the graphic score that we had to cross, and literally that took some courage to do. But the nice thing was, actually, when we first worked on the piece and premiered it, was at Arizona State University, and we still, unfortunately, haven't been in the same room and played this piece for you yet, Matana, but she was in front of students there. We workshopped the piece, and there was a huge Matana projected on the screen, on the stage behind us, and she was coaching us on the very specific set of instructions and rules of engagement that go along with this graphic score. So that was a great window in, and I feel like I don't know if you would feel this is true, but if you were to listen to our performances over the history of our performing, we've played it quite a bit at this point, even though many of our performances this spring were canceled. The form holds. There is a form and a thread that you can follow each time, and it's improvised a lot, but the container is strong, and every time, and those of us on this session will get to hear it a second time, and you'll see if you can follow the same form, but really it does hold. So
that's really great to hear. That's great to hear. Yeah, with graphic scoring also, I think some people are under the impression that it's a free-for-all, and maybe because there are some free-for-all graphic scores, I'm not into free-for-alls. And that's, I mean, that is, my core was in jazz music. And so I just have certain roots that I'm trying to still stay connected to. And so that means that there are structures that have to hold. And you guys do such a beautiful job. It's just beautiful.
I just wanted to add one other thing, is that Matana has given us this beautiful visual document that we use as a score to interpret certain gestures and lines and whatnot. But I would say that that's not completely out of line with how we've done it. You know, musical notation is an imprecise method of communicating the intentions of a composer, but a lot of us are trained to look at composer manuscripts. And I know some composers in particular, like Beethoven and Schubert, have quite emotional handwritings and specific ways that are regularized when a printed score comes out. But if you look at the manuscript, you can see like certain directional information that really helps with the interpretation of a piece. And I would say it's the same way with Matana's visual score as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I would, you know, as the instructions, I don't have the score in front of me, but there's a fair amount of instructions on the, you know, on the first page. And do you have the score, or does anyone remember, you know, some of those details? I think it's fascinating. You know, and I think that this idea of the border and the borderlands and these multiple traditions, and I think that sometimes in kind of the Western kind of classical music canon, sometimes there was no, you know, there was just notes, and sometimes there's more instructions, and sometimes, you know, jazz kind of, once you get into other kind of genres, there's notes, but it's more about a group and a band actually interpreting it. And I actually get that a lot from this performance that I heard, and when y'all were here in 2018, when I listened to this, I think of one organism playing it, which is such a great pleasure. So that's something too. And if another group played it, I'm sure it would be completely different. But you know, this is something that because of your years of playing together, and I think that's what I was trying to get at before. It is the clarity, I think, of the vehicle. Going back to Matana's vision for it, I think is that helps bring everything together and tie it all up.
You know, I mean, yeah, anything we do, you know, with the quartet is every time we see a new score, every time we open a score that's existed for some time, we're bringing our not only our individual experiences, but also our collective experiences every time we've come together and played music together, you know, in any situation. So it does take a lot of trust, and just also sharing things together, you know, sharing musical experiences, sharing food, sharing thoughts, sharing laughter and pain. And you know, when Michael came to the group, right, which is about, has it been 4 years now? 5 years. That was really you know, Michael's an incredible player, an incredible musician that we've respected for a long time. The thing that we needed to work on was just it wasn't anything we could necessarily work on. It was just being together and spending time together and building this kind of tapestry of experiences that would support and hold us in unknown situations, right? Because like Colin said, you know, this thing might have been risky or it took some courage, and other things too, like playing Opus 132. That was also first, like as a string quartet, and digging into it. And I pulled up the first page of the score in case it's in case you want to go back to it. But I also wanted to just jump back to the very, very beginning when you talked about applause. And we've played, as Colin said, we've played this piece now many times, and this program, the Healing Modes program, which includes the Beethoven and the 5 commissions. And we've actually some of the more powerful experiences playing this program have been recently, where we had an opportunity to present the program without intermission and interspersing the new commissions within the Beethoven, so that the thread is not broken up by applause. And actually, that's how we created the track list of the album follows, where Borderlands is actually the first track, and it just puts it like front and center, and the Beethoven appears out of it. The first movement of the Beethoven, which starts in this, these really ominous 4 notes, and it's actually like an incredible connection that we've really, really enjoyed. And playing Borderlands on its own is an emotional, it's a very direct and engaging emotional experience. But then doing the whole project, which is about 85 minutes long in performance, has been also a really interesting experience that we couldn't do if we didn't spend a lot of time together, and we couldn't do it without that tapestry that holds us together. Yeah.
Screen share of the score. Johnny, you have you're muted.
You have the score, right?
Kate just said on the side here that she could share the score on the screen just so we could take a peek, or everyone could take a peek at maybe one page.
Do it.
Okay, thank you. Maybe silence.
I mean, I'll just, maybe while she's pulling it up, I'll just say that, some of the rules of engagement that, contribute to one's feeling while playing it are things like that we turn our pages from, say, this page that you're now seeing to the next one every 36 seconds, which Matana referenced as the average time it takes to handcuff someone.
Wow.
Other things are like, important dates that one can treat as musical material. You see that H there? That's a place where we hum, and we hum at. And that's part of the instructions. You must hum. I love that. And so we do that at key moments. And I think there's something about the organization according to time, and that crazy stuff can be going on, but boom, then all of a sudden you come together into these moments of humming together, And I guess I'm just thinking of something you said, Matana, about interest in sort of mundane artifacts or everyday facts that, we're flooded with facts all the time. But when those facts when you look at them from a different angle, then they become artistic material in this case, and make us all think about them in a different way. Oh, and and the part that we hold these truths to be self-evident, being speech rhythm that we're going to play on our instruments at various times in the piece. So there are these moments of extreme separateness and extreme coming together that I feel when I'm in the middle of the piece.
Nick, I think you're muted.
Oh, I love hearing that. As the creator of that concept on paper, that concept on paper, composition, it just, to hear that you are able to enter into a sonic experience in a very particular way, using that mundane data, depending on, you know, who we ask, which is interesting, just fills me with a lot of joy.
Can you guys hear me now? It's funny. I was having a Beethoven-like experience because I still can't hear a word that Johnny is saying, strangely. So it's oddly reminiscent of the deaf composer, but that's where the similarity probably stops. I wanted to say too, like, you know, we've been talking, I think, a lot about, you know, the score and the process of making the music, and you know, and the incredible, you know, work that's gone into that, and this kind of borders that I think Matana has asked us, you know, as a string quartet, you know, to, you know, as Colin was also referencing. I think the additional magic there, I think that's in my way, and I don't know, it's different for other people, but in my way of thinking, that's a precursor in a way to the then even crazier web and sort of lock and key that happens in the mind and the ear of the audience, you know, and the audience both as individual and as the collective experience, you know, in a time like all of this is actually acting upon the audience, you know, in a way, and then calling the audience into relationship as we are called into a new kind of relationship with this piece of music, you know. And I think that's like the, you know, I'm just kind of going on about performance and audience right now. This is the thing that we don't have really right now, you know, and actually, but also having the experience of playing this piece in front of audiences, you know, I can say how powerful that's been felt, you know, in the context of like a program that goes a lot of different places, you know, this, you know, this piece sometimes will stop an audience in their tracks, you know, and some people will come away like this was the most impactful thing. I think for other people, you know, maybe that's not the case. Maybe they were not ready for it in that moment, but I think there's an intense relationship that is that we are asking of the audience, you know, in this piece, you know, that I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but that is something that happens every time and will always happen every time. And I think a lot of it has to do with sort of changeable nature of how the piece is constructed. I love that.
That's amazing. I often think a lot about when I play my own music, I think a lot about the audience as witness, as standing in witness, and how witness makes room for those people who don't really want to be in witness, but they're there, so they have to participate along with the people who are bearing witness.
Yeah, Matana, I get that a lot, and I've actually, you know, in your work with experience and how it connects to witness experience, but then also the other part of that is where you let it go. It has like something else, and it has like its own life frame. And I think that it has something to do with history and memory and future. It all kind of collides, and I think that's really beautiful as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, creating that type of environment where we do have a virtual audience, which is really hard to get your head around. And, however many folks are able to tune in now, but the chat comments aren't really, we see one here, the score is incredible. We hear, I don't know if this person knows you, Johnny. I don't know if you could see this. There's some here about that, but you have a fan, it looks like. So I think maybe in our just the last couple minutes before we go back into the second version of the piece, I would love to, Matana, you said you're in Berlin and you're working, you were in a residency, I'm guessing, is that right?
Yeah, I'm a guest of a program called the DAAD, and it funded a year of being in Berlin to work purely on my compositional work and to take a step away from performance. And then after this, I was diving right back into performance touring. I put out a new record last year also, and had put off touring so that I could have this experience. But then when the virus began, it seemed too dangerous to leave just yet.
And what is the world like in Berlin? We know a little bit about, I know about New York and I know about North Carolina and some of the South here. And I mean this in the sense of the maybe coronavirus and also the political kind of, questioning and really kind of work that has been heartbreaking and also just on the forefront of everyone's minds right now.
Well, it was quite obvious from the beginning of the virus and the shutdown that what was being done here felt a lot saner than what I was seeing in the headlines in the US. In terms of, Andrea Merkel is a problematic figure for a lot of Berliners, but at the same time, she's a scientist. And I think having a leader that had like some understanding of that science is real and helped to keep the pace here relatively steady. Also, it's been, I've been traveling in and out of Europe for almost 20 years now, and it's just been really interesting to see how even Berlin is grabbing on to the Black Lives Matter movement in a way that's really positive and supportive, where I walk out in the street and I see Black Lives Matter signs and, not just on the side, but like in front of the subway, like, the understanding of human dignity and the importance of treating people equally there's something different going on here that's just been a really healing space for me to be around as I've watched, my country, my birth country, the country that I love, almost dissolving at the seams in terms of how the news has been reported here.
There's definitely, I can't speak for New York. I read the same kind of news probably that everyone reads. But in North Carolina, we are experiencing, even here in the mountains, protest, counter-protest, some violence mostly from, I believe, counter-protest. But there's also some sort of hope in this. And you mentioned, freedom. And I think that this is something that, and even going back into the piece, the words actually in the piece and how this is rings true to, our situation and kind of goes back to the framers where we're at. Nick, you're in Boston, which is, it seems like it always has a different take on things than the East Coast.
Yeah, I mean, this is a you know, a city with a difficult history, you know, of race relations, you know, and you know, it's kind of you know, it's also a city with, you know, that actually kind of wears its history, you know, both for good and for bad, you know, a lot of the time. But there's a very strong voice, you know, active here, and it's you know, for change and for you know, moving forward. And I think that feels like yeah, the dominant voice right now, and feels hopeful here. Though I think that we're still in this, you know, Massachusetts is doing well with COVID, but this is something that's affecting all of the conversations too. And so all of these worlds kind of coming together at the same time is just creating a sense of, and plus the election, of course, in the fall is just creating a great sense of the unknown. And I think, you know, maybe all of us are just holding our breath a little bit right now.
Well, and since we've been playing this piece, of course, you know, COVID and social justice, those things have come to the fore as what consumes the headlines. But the border crisis, has, as you said, Matana, hasn't gone away. It's going on. And in fact, it has a very real health aspect right now, which is that we've been exporting, you know, Corona back to countries by deporting people and spreading them all around the country in prisons. So, you know, the fact that we don't have a good way of dealing with the issue has had a health consequence in this very moment, you know.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we can't hear you, Jeff.
Have you been following that, Matana, the border situation as an update?
I have, and I've not seen anything that's making me excited or happy in terms of the United States of America remembering where they came from. I don't, and this idea, you know, it's one thing to, I mean, even putting adults through that is incredibly problematic. But again, this idea of putting children through that is so offensive. And this, you know, California and Texas both used to be Mexico. Like, what are we really talking about here when we're talking about borders? What does it mean? And who has the right to place those borders? And it just still brings up a lot of questions that are now being kind of coded over by all the other traumas that we're having to deal with, not just as American citizens, but as citizens of the world, because this is very much a global moment that is connecting us across so many different spheres. I hope that the discussions around the trauma that still continues to go on at borders and how it mirrors other, you know, the prison industrial complex. There's so many different ways to talk about the bleed. I hope that at some point it will be eradicated because it's an offense to humanity as a whole, not just to citizens of America or citizens of Mexico, but really to just human dignity as a whole.
Yeah, and that brings us full circle back to music as a healing force. And this idea that there are these qualities in art to connect or to move past borders and to move across countries and across the world. So I am so thankful that y'all have made time to join us for this conversation, and that you, Brooklyn Rider, went out of your way to create two versions of this wonderful piece, Borderlands, for us. Thank you, Matana, for joining us. Thank you, Michael, Colin, Nick, Johnny. I hope to see y'all soon, and I hope everyone stays safe. I hope to talk soon. So
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
me.
Jeff.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So we're going to hear now Borderlands once again. Brooklyn Ryder, Matana Roberts. Enjoy your night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Borderlands. Very important. Defines a border.
Borderlands. The mirror breaks the dictionary. Borderlands order. As another poem man had message of this mirror. The term Borderlands primarily something possible. A mirror better contemplating national assistance to deserve the thing. The one that is consistent to build historical violence, consistent to fascist oppression. Looking at it.